Hi, and welcome to another edition of the 2 End Cancer podcast. I am Adam Benigni, and this is, it feels weird introducing you, but I've known you for so long. Mark and Caitlin Pietz, and how long have we known each other through?
We became friends. Our first date in New York City was in 2017.
For a U2 concert, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It was our first double date.
And ever since then.
And we actually, it was at the Peloton that Friday night where Lori and I started talking. I'm like, wait, you're going to New York for the concert? And one thing led to another. And
we, of course, Mark and I are, enjoying the post show. It's a New York bar, and Kate just referred to us as complete
dorks,
freak weirdo. Yeah. So, and off we went.
Yeah.
And
friendship made it happen.
I was joking with Kate in the lobby downstairs when we came in to record that we might all be a little bit too prepared for this.
Right.
No script, no list of questions. But in all seriousness, I think this is great because I think the two of you kind of epitomize and sum up so much of what the Ride for Roswell, Empire State Ride, but more importantly, in general, this cause and this fight is all about. So I tried to think of the best way to go about it. Why don't we do this sort of chronologically?
Okay.
Right. And so we met down in New York. You two became friends, but really the thing that brings us together, my wife Lori, and a group that's connected to the Ride for Roswell and Empire State Ride is the cause. Mm-hmm. It's the thing that kind of unifies so many people. And so, Mark, you started out with, you've been involved with, you organized the Peloton for the Ride for Roswell, you're multiple-time Empire State rider. We've ridden it together. And Kate, you've always been a volunteer through this process. So I guess initially, as you started into that, each of you talk about what sort of inspired you and got you headed down that path.
So I think, for us it started, and I'll let you talk about your dad. So Kate's dad was treated here at Roswell, and it was like 2006. So my first ride was in 2007. I'd never done the Ride for Roswell until 2007. But as a cyclist, I thought, in memory of Caitlin's father, I rode it in 2007. So I don't know if you want to talk about it.
He had passed in March of 2007. And he, kind of a side note, but he was treated here, and Roswell gave him an extra year of his life that I don't think he would have had if he'd been treated someplace else. And they gave him a year of a decent quality of a life. So that's when we really got involved. And Mark did the ride all by himself that day. He's like, I'm just going to go and do it in, memory of your dad. So.
And I'll tell you, the thing that really jumped out at me, there was a couple things about that first year. Send out some emails and you don't know what to expect. And since it's 2007, I think we raised just under $1,800 that year. And I was like, I'm like, this is amazing that people just want to donate to this cause. Mm-hmm. So that sort of shocked me. But then I remember that morning, and I was honestly, I wasn't a cyclist then that I am now. So I was on a hybrid, and I was doing the 65-mile route, and I was nervous. I was alone, a single rider. Mm-hmm. But that morning, in the crowd, it was so emotional. Where they ask everybody to raise your hand if you're a survivor, and it was an amazing day, and then. At UB afterwards, I wandered around a little bit, and I remember coming home and I said to Kate, I'm like, that was amazing. I'm like, definitely going to go back next year, and you should come with me. So that kind of kicked off our journey into the Ride for Roswell.
It is incredible. Like I was in a previous episode, I had talked about, we live near the route near Dodge, mm-hmm. and so instead of going down to UB, we cheat a little bit and ride down and hop on. But every year, we ride that road countless times, but on ride day, it's the vibe, it's the energy, mm-hmm. it's everything around from the celebration of hope on Friday night through the ride and everything that happens. It's a feeling, it's a level of energy. And so with that in mind, Mark described his sort of entry into the event. When you started volunteering, Kate, did you feel something similar?
I didn't start volunteering actually until Empire State Ride, because I would drive him around on ride day. it's different now. I just drop him off at your house in the morning, and then I don't worry about seeing him for the rest of the day. The Empire State Ride is what really got me involved. And I had driven Mark to Weedsport he was riding days, the last 3 days?
2 or 3.
Yeah, the last 3 days, I think. Whatever. And so I drove him, and I stayed for dinner because I was spending the night and leaving in the morning. And they had, we knew nothing about ESR. And they had people, they had, after dinner, there's programming, and they had a cancer patient tell a story. And it was now our good friend David Brown, whose birthday is today, by the way. And he got up and told his story, and it was so similar to my dad's. And I had met David once or twice, bike rides out of our house or whatever, but I wasn't friends with him yet. And he's talking, I'm just sobbing by his story. And I said to Mark, I need to get involved in this. And I said, I want to volunteer for the whole week next year. Now, I know none of the staff at this point, nobody. And then the next year I did. I was a week-long volunteer, and I was, at that point, the only volunteer. So it was such a emotional week. And even meeting Mark at the finish line that first year that he did it in 2017, it was just, it's the most emotional thing at the end. And you're watching these riders who just spend a whole week together, and they become a family. And that ESR family is no joke. And that's our whole group of friends, basically. Yep. And so that's what got me started in my volunteer journey. So now it's Ice Cycle, I volunteer for, ESR, Ride for Roswell, and basically anything else they'll have me for.
And she's incredible. We've had a few encounters in those rest stops. And,
yes, we have.
Yeah.
and she's incredible. Best peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
hands down.
I've ever
I make
had.
the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the world.
And introduced the Fluffernutter to the group this year.
This past year, I went all out. I got fluff. I had Nutella. Mm-hmm. I had 2 kinds of peanut butter, 3 kinds of jelly.
It was on.
I had signs made with the menu. Yeah. Rest stop 2 was the best.
So we have, so we start to all go through this. Excuse me. 2019, I think we did the full.
You guys, yeah, we did it. Yeah,
2018, you did the beginning and the end.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 2019, the full. So there is this bond that takes place. Mm-hmm. And then, is it 3 years ago now for you, Kate?
It'll be 3 years in April. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which I never thought, that I'd be a patient at Roswell. I thought the only reason I would come down here was to volunteer and, do things that I found enjoying. And so I became a patient, and all good, couple surgeries, chemo, radiation. But at my bell ringing, which was just 2 years ago on February 1st, I had, all my friends and family there, and I would say that 85 to 90% of the group was our ESR family. And the Alliance staff was there, which was amazing to me. But all of our friends that came down for it, I knew through ESR. I don't know who we would be friends with if we never did ESR, quite honestly. But so then Roswell, it kind of took a whole new meaning to me as a patient. But I got to tell you, there's no place else I rather would have been.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day. Your bell ringing, it was
amazing.
Incredible, emotional
the best day
experience, and there's all that through ESR or whoever else, and then there's everyone in the lobby who just happens to be there, who just stops
right
and celebrates with you. It's an incredibly powerful.
And there's nothing like being anywhere in the hospital and you hear that bell ring. It brings tears to my eyes every single time I'm in here and I hear someone ring the bell.
Okay, so it hits home about as closely as it possibly can all of a sudden. And you experience, at the very least, part of what all this fundraising and what all of these efforts
it really does.
Collectively, what it does. So how did that affect your experience? What was your experience and how did that play in?
What I found amazing, one of our good friends, Dr. Joyce Ohm, is a research scientist here at Roswell, and she's part of our ESR family. And she always uses me as an example using this story. I found out that only 30% of women with breast cancer need chemotherapy. And there's a test they do when they do your surgery and they remove the tumor, they send tissue out to be tested, and it comes back and it tells you whether or not you would benefit from chemo. I unfortunately was in that 30% that needed chemo. But I'm like, oh my God, and my doctor even said to me, and Joyce told me the same thing. 3 years ago, they would have put every woman through chemo. Mm-hmm. And now the fact that, it's not an easy, chemo's not fun. And the fact that 70% of women do not need that and just have surgery and radiation is amazing. And so Joyce uses me as that example when she talks during ESR, that this is where your money goes, to research like this, so that 70% of women don't have to endure chemo when they have breast cancer. And that to me is just incredible, because you actually get a story about where your money goes. And she uses me as an example and, shows my picture. And it really hits home that, oh my God, our money is really going to something that really affects so many people.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, we've all shared in that experience. I lost my dad in 2004, and there are patient survivors that I meet today that had a very similar diagnosis to his, was lung cancer, and are living basically a normal life.
Yeah.
Right.
With a lot of the treatments and things that have been developed, some of it specifically with this alliance. Funding,
Yes.
The Ride for Roswell ESR, the Roswell Park Alliance funds. It's absolutely incredible. And so doesn't it motivate to continue on?
And we try to raise as much money as we can, and found out the year I was diagnosed, we really killed it in the fundraising.
Yeah, I think one of the things, there's so many, so we've got 8,000 riders, and I say 8,000 riders, 2,000 volunteers. So there's 10,000 people, in Buffalo who are, intimately involved with the Ride for Roswell. So, trying to get that message out there over and over again. And I think a lot of times it's just like, okay, we're fundraising. And there's, especially with Facebook now, everybody's always fundraising for something. And I really try to, whenever I can, find somebody, I'm always wearing ride gear. So you're at Wegmans, or you're at, New York Beer Project, or wherever you are, and somebody, if they want to talk about the ride, I'm always talking about the ride and saying, hey, the ride is great, but the money that's raised, and to try to talk to people about, the money that's raised and how much additional money it generates, bringing in, it's not just patient care, but the research that's going to help not people just in Buffalo, but, nationwide or globally. And, that's going to have an impact. It will have an impact on your life. What are the statistics? You're going to know somebody, or you're going to have cancer. So, really trying to drive that home. And it's amazing, how generous people are, here in Western New York to continue to donate to the cause. It's amazing. So that's really, what keeps me going. Every year I kind of get ramped up again, okay, let's start the fundraising, and, how can we really, hammer home that, how important this is for people to donate.
Yeah, that motivation, and I know with the two of you, it's so genuine for a lot of the reasons we've talked about here. It just, and it manifests in a lot of ways. Mark, I mean, we should mention also Volunteer of the Year.
Oh, yes, Ride for Roswell.
For the Ride for Roswell. I mean,
this
past, or 2024. So what does that mean to you? Because we've talked about some of the things that you've done, but I mean, every year that we promote this event and talk about it and share in it, I mean, without volunteers, they are the engine that makes this thing go. It's so vital to the success of the event. So I guess talk about that aspect for you.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I was completely blown away and truly humbled and honored by being recognized, because again, there's every year there's 2,000 volunteers, and there's this ride to pull off the Ride for Roswell. It's amazing when you think about all the rest stops and all the routes and all the towns and all the meetings and everything that has to go through.
The staff that doesn't sleep for a week.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was again very appreciative to be recognized, but there's so many people who do so much, and I think. One of my little story about it, if we have time, is edit this down later. I do like to tell this story. So I started the ride in 2007, and then like I said, we raised, we were Extra Mile Club that year. I didn't even know what Extra Mile Club was at the time. So 2008 was the first Peloton, So I get invited to do the Peloton, being part of Extra Mile Club. I'm like, oh, sure. So back in the day, it was Saturday morning at 6 a.m. to ride from Roswell to UB to then get in your whatever route you're doing. So that first year, and it was raining and pouring, and Mitch Flynn, the founder, obviously we all know Mitch. I had said to him beforehand, and had just really met him that year, said, so I'm doing the 65-mile route again. I'm like, I'm a little bit concerned that, by the time we get up there and get started, like we're way behind everybody. So we had a group of us, a small group that Mitch led. Once the Peloton got up to UB, then, we regrouped and headed out on the 65-mile route together. So I'm riding with Mitch, and I'm watching him stop any rider who had a flat tire or a mechanical, and every rest stop talking to the volunteers. And I'm just kind of, watching that, and I was amazed seeing sort of like behind the scenes of it. And remember, that weekend, I remember saying to Kate, I'm like, there's a cause here that I want to do more for. So I have to figure out how to get involved with this. And then ended up joining, becoming a volunteer and joining the Extra Mile Club committee, which doesn't really exist anymore in that capacity. But the Extra Mile Club committee, we were in charge of the Peloton. So eventually, over time, just sort of moved into the role of managing the logistics for the Peloton, for the training rides and everything else. So that's really, my big, I would say, contribution to the ride. And, it's great to help.
Well, it's got a great story.
It is. Well, no, that story's coming now. Well, but because it illustrates the point. Because I think you and I are a couple of a handful. A couple of years ago, they asked us to kind of take a group picture or whatever, who have done every Peloton.
Yes, this will be 18.
I remember that specific one and what it used to be, but to get to the point of, when you handle the logistics of the Peloton to what it's actually become, because now it's 200 riders, give or take, police escort from here at Roswell out to UB on a Friday during rush hour and all of those. It's more than a little bit of organization is required. And I can remember one year I've had the privilege for so many of them riding up front with Mitch Flynn. And it's such a privilege and an honor. And it in part with the whole Channel 2 connection and the live broadcast. And they have radios, the front of the Peloton, the middle of it, the back or whatever. And Mark is right behind Mitch and I. And I can hear a little radio squawk going on there. And then Mark's like, we're turning off Main Street. The Peloton is 13 seconds ahead. 13.
I think we're behind schedule.
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. I think
were
we
very
were early.
close,
It would be you. It would be more like you to have us. But I bet it was. The point
13
is this:
seconds.
Not 10, not 11.
No.
13.
13 seconds.
I say we run a tight ship.
That's what and you know what? And people, it's an incredibly well-oiled machine. It's been incredibly successful, and it gets in there on time. And that's important.
Safely.
Number one,
Safely.
for safety, for rider safety. And number two, because the timing of it relates to the celebration of hope and what's such an incredible event.
That's amazing.
I think,
on
yeah.
Friday night.
And just for anybody listening, so the reason for that is, so we do say, like, it's roughly a 12 and a half mile ride from Roswell to UB, the route we take. So the celebration of hope is not waiting for us to come in. So there's a timing factor there. So we really need to be there on time and keep the pace. So I kind of keep just a couple checkpoints along the way. And I look to see, like, okay, where are we at 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? Okay, we need to speed up a little bit. We need to slow down a little bit. And we're always almost right on. But I like to, I do now like to be precise.
A little bit, yeah. He's conducting the orchestra.
Yep.
Right?
Hey, and again, we have to say, not just me. There's a lot of people involved in that who help out. So
that make all of that work. And so now, when you talk about the volunteerism, survivorship, does it all kind of, what does it mean? What does all of that mean to you? Everything we've covered here, what does it mean to you as we look toward the 30th
I can't believe it's going to be the 30th.
ride for Roswell.
That's incredible. And to think where it started with like 10 people or something. Mitch got 100 people or something like
It was 100,000, I think, the first year.
and
$100,000.
Yeah. With like some of his buddies.
Yeah.
And to see what it's grown to. But it is such an emotional weekend, from the celebration of hope, which always got me, before I was a cancer survivor. And you just see all of Western New York come together, because everybody knows someone who rides in it. There's 8,000 riders and 2,000 volunteers, so that's a lot of our population that is involved. And it is just so meaningful that these 8,000 riders care enough about Roswell Park to go and do this. And we've had some bad weather, some really bad weather. We've had some hot weather. And everybody, the community just comes together for this day. And we all wait for that announcement of how much money was raised. We wait for you to be up on stage, you and Mitch making that announcement. And it's just like you're on pins and needles waiting to see if we hit whatever milestone we were going to hit that year. And it's just an incredible, incredible event.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, with the 30th, knowing you're probably going to ask that question. And, it's funny, I always ride weekend. I'm
A lunatic.
I'm a little crazy, focused. Once we get through Friday, I would say, like, once the Peloton is safely into the celebration of hope, then I'm like, okay, it's fun. It's now it's ride weekend. Now I can enjoy it a little bit more. But I was thinking about the 30th, and thinking about as a fundraising event, as a cycling event. Over the past 30 years, how many events have come and gone? So the fact that, the staying power, I think, is a testament to, Buffalo and Western New York. When you think about summer in Buffalo, which we all look forward to, what are the big things? The Erie County Fair, Allentown Art Festival, the Taste of Buffalo, and the Ride for Roswell. These huge events that everybody looks forward to. And it's such a testament that this event continues to grow in size, and riders come in and out. There's 8,000 riders, but every year there's some riders who don't do it anymore and new riders who come in. But the money continues to increase, and I just think it's an incredible. Like I said, it's really a testament to Western New York and what Roswell Park means to this community. It's amazing.
It is. It represents so much of what Buffalo is all
so
about.
lucky to have. If you're unfortunate to need Roswell Park, we are so lucky that it's in our backyard. Because during ESR this year, Rainier, and I'm not even going to attempt to say his last name, 'cause
Rainier Brenchens.
okay, he focused on the fact that Roswell Park is going to become a destination hospital, and we're going to get people coming from all over the country to be treated here, which is just amazing. And we're lucky that it's in our backyard if we need it.
Well, Rainier Brenchens, and for those who may not know who are watching or listening to this, this is the doctor who they recruited from New York.
Sloan Kettering.
Sloan Kettering. Candace Johnson, the president and CEO, has compared it to like signing Josh Allen.
Yes.
Right? Like that caliber of, and he is overseeing and leading the cell therapy, the clean rooms, a lot of where Roswell has stepped up. And speaking of where the money goes, the development of these clean rooms and basically the re-engineering of immune cells, the cutting edge of where they really feel like there could be cures in the future. It's worked on the blood cancers, and now with some upcoming trials here at Roswell, they're going to focus on the solid tumors. So there's so much hope, so much promise. And that's as we celebrate 30 years this spring, that's just a great example of kind of where the money continues to go and where this fight is going. So Mark and Caitlin, we all so appreciate your time and your willingness to share your story.
Every year. Thank you.
And we'll look forward to rolling with you this year again.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
Our driveway, 5:45 a.m. and no later.
And then my best, one of our favorite parts of the weekends, and our group always goes out for a nice dinner to
nice
celebrate
dinner afterward.
Saturday night.
Right, and that's just
We make it a whole weekend.
Yeah, it's an event. It is
that's
It's
a
as
good
big
point, though.
it's a holiday for
It is. It's a holiday
for Lori and me. Yeah.
and it's pretty much our favorite weekend of the year.
And I think, talking about that before, like saying, what is Ride Weekend and what it means to people, that's another part of it. So many people, there are some people, I only see that one day, and everybody, you're like family on that day. I haven't seen you in a year. I might not even know your name, but you're going to get a hug, and it's great to see you, and how are you doing? That community factor that you feel out on the ride itself, and then back at UB, it's amazing. So yeah, it's always a great weekend, even when it rains.
Even when it pours and it's 50 degrees.
Or is incredibly hot.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
It's 90 degrees.
I'll take the heat
Either
over
way.
the rain, though.
But look, more than, I think it's cumulatively 80 million over the 30 years. And it was 5.9 million last year. 6 million.
Well,
coming.
gotta be.
I was kind of glad we didn't. I'm like, let's save that for the 30th.
All right, so fingers crossed.
6 million this year.
Mark, Caitlin, thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching the 2 and Cancer and listening to the 2 and Cancer